David Marples is a professor of Russian and East European history at the University of Alberta. He joins me now from Edmonton. Professor, I want to ask you first about these sanctions against the Russian oligarchs, but not yet oil and energy. Do you think these sanctions will have much of an effect?
Well, they'll certainly be an irritant. The question really is how close are these oligarchs to Vladimir Putin? I mean, clearly they're not opposed to Putin, but what kind of level are we really hitting here? Are we hitting the top people? And I think also the richest stratum of Russian society is perhaps the stratum that knows best what is happening around the world. I think a lot of the Russian population are listening to the propaganda and the official reasons for the invasions of Ukraine and accepting it because it's the only news that they hear. The oligarchs, on the other hand, do have a better awareness of the world around us, and certainly they should be a target. They should be a target, but I think the real way to hit Russia would be with energy and cutting off trade between Russia and Europe, and if possible, even between Russia and China.
Russia has blocked access in its country to several foreign media sites, including the BBC, Deutsche Welle, and even Facebook. Why is it so important for Putin to be limiting the information people within Russia are able to access?
Well, I think precisely because Russia is using this propaganda to convince the population that this mission, so-called mission, special mission, is really worthwhile. Because already Russia is suffering very high casualties, up to 4,500 already killed, according to Ukrainian sources. Russia is also suffering economically. The currency's plummeted. The banks are suffering. So already he has to make a case why this war is necessary. And that's the obvious thing, to hit on. For most Russians, it's not obvious why they would be attacking a state that's really been regarded as fraternal for most of the independence period and in the Soviet period as well. So many Russians cannot understand why they would need to attack Ukraine, so they have to be convinced that Ukraine is in the hands of some neo-Nazi group that's also following orders from the West. In fact, there is no neo-Nazi group anywhere in the Ukrainian leadership, and the closest thing to a neo-Nazi today is actually the leader of Russia, who's carrying out this aggressive policy.
And we're seeing what looks like to be a very dangerous escalation right now with Russian forces attacking this nuclear power plant in Ukraine, which is one of the largest power plants in Europe. How dangerous of an escalation is this?
Well, attacking a nuclear power station is very dangerous because it could lead to immediate increases of radiation background in the area and perhaps even well beyond the area and into different parts of Europe, and actually, ironically, as well as Russia, because it's very close to the Russian border. So I think this is something that the International Atomic Energy Agency is already very concerned about, and was concerned as well when Russian forces took over the Chernobyl nuclear plant in the central part of the country, where, although it's no longer operating as a nuclear power station, it is being decommissioned, and there are very radioactive areas around there as well. Ukraine relies on nuclear power for about 60% of its electricity, and obviously Russia wants to cut this off. But it's a very dangerous thing to do, particularly when you're talking about radiation. And certainly Ukraine has suffered enough from radiation in its recent history.
Yeah, it's certainly very concerning indeed. In looking at previous attacks or invasions in other countries, do you see similarities in the way that Russia is going about with its attacks in Ukraine?
Well, it certainly reminds me of the way Russia attacked Chechnya back in the 1990s, in that they initially began by sending in raw recruits who were pushed back fairly quickly. And only later did they send in special forces and take a more sophisticated approach. The attack is on such a scale right now that it is impossible just to use special forces. They have to send in regular army units, and these are the units that have been struggling to make an impact. Of course, if Russia resorts to an air attack, missiles already are in place, but if it resorts to an air attack and uses planes, this will be devastating for Ukraine. And this, I think, is the biggest fear now, because once air control is in place, Russia can rain down bombs on any city, and it will cause much more devastation than we've seen so far And even though the devastation so far has been very regrettable and very high, it could get much, much worse.
All right, we'll leave it there. David Marples in Edmonton, thank you.